to cut to the chase, there is no move that was made yesterday at the trade deadline in the NFL that made me think, man, the Cowboys should have made that trade. Not one move. Now, obviously, if the Cowboys didn't make the trade for Amari Cooper, then yeah, I certainly would have looked at the Eagles going out and get Golden Tate, the Texans going out to get Demaryius Thomas. Obviously, Demaryius Thomas is a guy that I brought up before Amari Tate was traded. Amari Cooper was traded. So, but again, I'm happy with the bed the Cowboys made with the trades they made. Should they have gone and given up a pick for Clinton Dix? I mean, I don't really know. Like, let's look at it this way: the Packers aren't sellers, right? They still have Aaron Rodgers, and the Bears are winning the division at 4-3 right now, right? So, I mean, it's not as if they're out of the division race right now. So, you have to look at like the deeper meaning behind why the Packers would decide to get rid of Clinton Dix, because even if they hold on to him, they can still allow him to walk in free agency and recoup some of their losses through a supplemental pick. So, like, there had to be something deeper going on there with Clinton Dix. Patrick Prescott says, for a fourth. Again, why would the Packers trade him? They're competing for the division title. They're still very much in the thick of that division title race. Plus, they could have ended up getting compensation with a compensatory pick, a supplemental pick, compensatory pick, if they let him walk and he signs elsewhere. So, right, and Patrick Kahn says they also, and great point, not only did, they gave him up to a team in conference. So, the Packers didn't have to trade Clinton Dix. So what does that say that they did? And again, they still could have gotten a compensatory pick if they let him walk next year in free agency. Gerard Tyler says, has passed his prime. He hasn't been good for a few years now. Well, has not been good this year. Questionable last year. Was really good his first couple of years in the league. Which goes to show you. I mean, we overreact sometimes to draft picks playing well out at the outset. Anthony Brown's a great example of this. Steal, late-round pick Anthony Brown. Then he takes a major step back last year, and he's been okay this year. Still probably outperforming where he was taken, but that's, it takes a couple of years to get a real idea or sense of how these guys will end up. Curtis Starks in the house. What's going on? Curtis Starks, how are you? Keith Jones, Clinton Dix wasn't exactly a monster safety. Yeah, and again, all of a sudden now, all these guys that weren't traded to the Cowboys, they're the great. They're all pros. And Amari Cooper has issues with drops, but Golden Tate and Demaryius Thomas they're perfect. They would have been perfect. The idea, I've seen a lot of people, Cowboys fans in particular, look at the Golden Tate move and the Demaryius Thomas move to isolate two in particular, and say, I would have rather had those trades because I'm not giving up a first-round pick. Golden Tate is 31. He can play every position on the field, but he's not a true number one. The Eagles have Alshon Jeffrey. He's their number one, right? So they think that opens up opportunities for Zach Ertz and now Golden Tate. You bring Golden Tate into here. First of all, he's 31. His contract's up after this year, and he's not a true legitimate X number one. Period. Plus, the Eagles give up a third. Was it a third they gave up for Golden Tate? It's a lot to give up for a rental. And then there's Demaryius Thomas. The Texans gave up a fourth for Demaryius Thomas. A decent amount to give up for a rental. And again, Demaryius Thomas is 30. The thing that we have to get away from is trying to compare the compensation. Like, Amari Cooper, the Cowboys viewed trading a first-round pick for Amari Cooper as in, he's our first-round pick. He's 24 years old. So they could have taken a first-round pick who would have been 21, but comes in the league completely blue. Look at all of the first-round draft picks at receiver from this past draft. DJ Moore's starting to come on stronger for Carolina, but he's taking some time. It takes time to develop. So if they can sort of cut to the chase on Amari Cooper, and he's still at an age, even 4 years into the league, that there's major value there because he's so young. Like these trades are not even close to being the same. The Cowboys got as close as you can get to a first-round draft pick for a guy that's a fourth year in the league from an age standpoint. And again, Golden Tate and Demaryius Thomas they're on the downslope of the Cowboys believe they're getting a guy on the way up. Demaryius Thomas and Golden Tate are on the way down, plus they're just rentals. Plus, as stated before, Golden Tate's not a number one in the same way that Amari Cooper will be. Linda Green on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page says, Ari, I love the Cowboys no matter who they get. This love is all the way from Arkansas, but we need to win. Thanks, Linda Green, for checking in from Arkansas. Where are you in Arkansas, Linda? Patrick Prescott says, Philly going for it again, third for rental. Ouch. Yeah, no, I mean, they give up a third-round pick for gold. I mean, think about it this way. So Detroit was both a seller and a buyer. So they sold a very valuable piece on offense in Golden Tate. They obviously bought Damon Harrison. But, again, you look at the NFC North, the Bears are 4-3 leading the division. So Detroit and Green Bay and Minnesota are still very much in that divisional race. So it made no sense that any of those teams, Detroit and Green Bay, who were active at the trade deadline, would be doing so in order to basically be sellers. They're not. The Packers got rid of HaHa Clinton-Dix because they wanted to recoup, I guess, some value for him. Maybe they thought it was going to exceed what they would have gotten from a compensatory pick when he left in free agency. Or maybe they didn't like how he was in the locker room. I'm not sure, but they were clearly in a rush to get rid of him. Tracy Foster in the house. Hey, Tracy, how are you? I still feel that Dak and Beasley should match up the rest of the season. They score. Yeah, and as stated, the Amari Cooper trade means a lot more for Cole Beasley. Like that's, we look at what Amari Cooper can bring from a production standpoint. The thing we're not looking at is what it means for Cole Beasley, who's going to be significantly better. Cole Beasley is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL and certainly an underrated piece to the Cowboys. But he's so much better when they have a legitimate number one on the outside to take some of the pressure away from him. What a number one on the outside means for him doesn't work its way out vice versa. And I think that's what the Cowboys found out after 7 games. Big Game James in the house. What up, Big Game James? How are you, brother? Michael Bird says, love the pick. Checking in all the way from Georgia. What up? Patrick Kahn says, Corey Miller says, I could make a case for Beasley's deep threat factor, but you're right. Patrick Kahn says, that's more about how Dallas uses him, honestly. Yeah. Talking about Cole Beasley. Donald's in the house. What up, Solar? Solar, I haven't seen you in a while, buddy. Where you been? Solar, what did you think of the Amari Cooper trade? I'm fairly confident you're happy with it, but I don't know that you've been on a stream. Are you taking a leave of absence for my stream, Solar? Was it something I said, buddy? Corey Miller says, yo, Big Game James in the house. Big Game, what did you think of the Amari Cooper trade? I know I'll continue to go back to this, and that's why I wanted to make this the number one topic on today's show. A lot of Cowboys fans were taking to social media to complain about the other trades that happened and why the Cowboys didn't make those trades instead. Because they got a 24-year-old who they believe is on his way up. Not a 31-year-old who isn't a number one on his way down, who's a rental for a third-round pick. Remember, the Cowboys have Amari Cooper as long as they want him for a first-round pick because, they can make they can go into this offseason if they like and give him an early extension, right? Like, they have the tools in place in order to sign him long-term, and it would behoove them to do so that they can spread out the money over a longer period of time. Big Game James says, loved it. Yeah. Tracy Foster says, how does peaches? Georgia. Michael Osefa says, from Hawaii, hang loose. Every state should have their own, hand signal, right? I think Hawaii's the only one that does. Texas, people would argue they're the Longhorns, but Aggie fans would say something different. And then Baylor, every school in Texas has their own hand sign, so it's not like a state hand signal thing. Curtis Harris in the house. What up? Chris Payne with the comment that I think is very important, and that is, glad we actually did something in the trade. How many times we did nothing for years? And that's like, that's the one thing for Cowboys fans that if you're complaining about trading him one for Amari Cooper, it's like, please, everybody's complaining about the Cowboys not being aggressive to make changes to make this team better. They did 2 moves this bye week that is going to make them better, they believe. Amari Cooper and then getting rid of Paul Alexander. Now, it's been said, and I think it's important to note, why didn't they just go with Mark Colombo in the first place? He's been on staff for like 3 years. They went into this, Frank Pollock, they kind of parted ways, mutually parted ways with Frank Pollock. So, they could have hired Mark Colombo instead of hiring Paul Alexander. And as I'm going to talk about later on in the show, this falls on the head coach, obviously, as it should. Big Game James says they were drafting a wide receiver anyway early. I know they said that. I don't buy that. I don't buy that they know who they were going to draft in the first round of the upcoming draft. But that doesn't matter to me. The point that I made from the start of the Cooper trade was it's only a bad move if the Cowboys were going to take a quarterback in the first round. Because, as we'll get to later on, the majority of starting quarterbacks in the NFL, roughly 70%, Patrick Kahn, are first-round draft picks. 70% of the current starters in the NFL are first-round draft picks. You know who's not included in that list? Drew Brees. He's the first pick in the second round. So, the 33rd pick. So, 75% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL were taken in the first 33 picks of the NFL draft. That says a lot. So, in order to get a franchise-type quarterback, you have to be taking that quarterback in the first round. So, if they were going to take a quarterback in the first round, it's a bad trade because I still would have taken a quarterback. Now, I know a lot of people have already said, not a good quarterback class, not sure if Herbert's going to come out. Plus, it's not like, if Herbert comes out from Oregon, he'd probably be the number 1 overall pick anyways, and the Cowboys won't be taking there. How good is Will Greer? Who are the other kind of quarterbacks in the conversation? So, now I personally think it might be too early to tell as far as what kind of viability some of these quarterbacks around college football have as being first-round draft picks. But if the Cowboys weren't going to take a quarterback with their first-round pick, then I'm okay with the trade, quite frankly. And Big Game James says they're all in on Dak. And look, I think this trade says a lot about Dak. It says a lot about Jason Garrett. It says a lot about Scott Linehan. If anybody thinks this trade says that the future of anybody is secure with this trade, that's just not the case. This trade and the subsequent firing of Paul Alexander in season tells you there's no excuses for anybody, Dak included. And again, even though they're not going to have a first-round pick in 2019, we'll get to this in a moment, should they take a quarterback in the second round? Or, which I've stated, and that is, well, now you're taking a quarterback in the first round of the 2020 draft, which could shape up to be a really, really good draft for quarterbacks. Michael Bird says, bring Dez back. We've apparently not put that to bed. But shout out to you, Michael Bird. Thank you for watching. Javier Barrios says, Cooper and Dez. Please don't encourage him. Dez is not coming back, folks. Dez is not coming back. David Beeler says, I still have faith in the Dak attack. Sure. And look, Amari Cooper is going to make him better. If he doesn't, then he's definitely not the guy. But Amari Cooper is going to make him significantly better. And this goes back to the throwing guys open conversation, right? Dez is a guy you have to throw open. You have to throw to tight windows to get the ball to Dez. Amari Cooper doesn't have, that's not the same situation. Dakota Stiegel. Jesus, really with Dez? At least I've got people that are here every day that are like, please, Brian Walker, no Dez talk, please. That's what I think my hope is that when somebody brings up Dez or Romo as a coach, that you guys, our community, will address those answers. That's my hope. Let's see here. Houston Cowboys. Shout out to the Houston Cowboys page. If you don't already, go like the Houston Cowboys page. Great content up on the Houston Cowboys page. He says, you said it best, Ari. Looking at all the other trades that took place, I think we made it out on top, all things considered. Yeah. But the thing is, people don't look at that because they're like, well, you gave up a first-round pick. Well, they gave up a first-round pick because, as Stephen Jones said, they thought they were getting first-round pick type player back. A 24-year-old, 6 months older than Calvin Ridley, who is a rookie player. Gerard Tyler says, I'm tired of Dez Romo being brought up every day. If you are, Jared, where do you think I am on that? I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've pretty much answered Dez questions every day since I started doing this live stream since the off season. Tony Enriquez, what's up, Tony Enriquez? He's checking in on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page. If you have not yet already, hit the share button. It's right there in the bottom left corner of your phone. Right there. Just go ahead, hit the share button. Tracy Foster says, stop hating. I'm not hating on Dez. Don't take that to mean I'm hating on Dez. I love Dez. He was on my fantasy team basically every year. Even like I overdrafted Dez in fantasy every year only because I liked him so much. And when I watched the Cowboys and I saw the X go up, I wanted to be getting the points for that. But like, first of all, the Cowboys decided this offseason they didn't need a number one. What they really decided is they didn't want Dez. Because Dez you have to throw open, which is like, that's not hating on Dez. And I can't believe I'm addressing this, but somebody called me a Dez hater. Tracy Foster did. Romo, LOL. Okay, never mind. Tracy Foster did not call me a Dez hater, so I'll stop. But I'm just saying, Dez was great because he could go up and get the football in contested situations. But when you have a quarterback that's not great at that, then you have little to no use of him, especially when he's consistently calling for the football in one-on-one situations, even when he's not creating separation. But I digress. Chris Bennett says, Dez has a job. He's a professional tweeter. Fair point. Jeff Gilbert, Kellen Moore is not the guy to help Dak. That's another one I get pretty much every day, and I think we're grasping for straws if we're blaming. Like, here's the thing, right? Paul Alexander gets blamed for the offensive line issues because he changed technique on them. So a coach comes in and changes technique on a offensive line that's really good. So, I think in that capacity, that's a move you have to make because it's a stupid move by Paul Alexander to do that. I just don't know that, Kellen Moore is that much of a difference between Dak Prescott being a good quarterback or a bad quarterback. Ryan England says, do sports journalists in Dallas still ask coaches during media interviews if they're bringing Dez back or Romo for OC? No, they do not. Especially the Romo for OC thing, because who would we ask that to? The only people on a weekly basis that we have access to interview are players, Garrett, Linehan, and Marinelli. I guess we could ask Garrett. Hey, Garrett, have you ever thought about replacing Linehan with Tony Romo? I think he's a pretty good offensive coordinator. But I get your point, Ryan. I get your point. Let's see here. Houston Cowboys says nobody wants Dez. Look, I shouldn't have brought this up. There's no reason for us to bring up Dez, and Patrick Kahn points it out very well, which is, you know who else goes up for contested balls? Amari Cooper. He also gets open, and he's also 24. He's also not a huge personality. So there's a lot of things. And look, there's major risk involved with the deal the Cowboys made for Amari Cooper. Of course there is. There's a chance that what we've seen from him the last couple of years is more indicative of the type of player that he is than what we saw from him his first couple of years in the league. But at least the Cowboys are willing to see it out. And at least the Cowboys weren't going to play it out with how they had it this season, because that's what we've seen from this organization and this team last decade. They're not willing to fix their issues on their roster from outside the organization. And it looks like now they are. All right, so just so I can put this conversation to bed, the Cowboys made the best trade from an upside point of view that was out there. They could have traded a 4th-round pick for Demaryius Thomas, which would have been trading a 4th-round pick for a rental, because he's $17 million against the cap next year, but only $3 million is dead money if you cut him. So the Broncos were going to cut him. The Texans are going to cut him. So the Texans gave up a 4th-round pick, but they're not bringing in Demaryius Thomas to be the number one. They got a number one. They're bringing him to be a complimentary piece. The Eagles did the same thing with Golden Tate, and they traded a 3rd, and he's a rental. A 3rd! So the Cowboys gave up a 1st for a guy that they think is a first-round pick, who they can have for as long as they want, so long as they want to extend him after this season, and he has the ability to create great separation, and on and on and on. Chris Bennett, no spooky graphics. Good point. No. Ooh, happy Halloween. If you see any, like, ghosts behind me, let me know. Give me a heads up, everybody. And then, haha, Clinton Dick. Like, the only one that I look at is like, you didn't take a flyer on Damon Harrison? That's one where it's like, okay, I can understand that. Haha, Clinton Dix, I'm fine with it. Again, Packers are not out of it. They're not sellers. So why do they trade him right now, especially when, if he walks, they would have gotten a compensatory pick? So I know I saw and thank you, shout out to Patrick Kahn at Draft Cowboys, my brother, co-host on the Cowboys Beat podcast. I mean, he's the one that was like, hey, you should talk about this, because everybody on Twitter is going crazy. Like, man, the Cowboys are stupid. They traded a first for Amari Cooper. I'd rather have Demaryius Thomas and Golden Tate. It's like, no, you wouldn't, for multiple reasons. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that out there. It's not, again, no guarantee that Amari Cooper is the real deal. Like, it's a move with tremendous risk. It's a very risky proposition to give up a first-round draft pick for Amari Cooper. But given what was given up for other guys, given what was available, it's a pretty good deal for the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion. And by the way, as Ninja Nuts points out, Golden Tate was a good pickup for the Eagles. And he's a Cowboys killer. He's a Cowboys killer. I mean, he had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against them earlier this season. So he's going to get 2 more cracks at them. And he's kind of annoying also because he's a showman. So he scores a touchdown and then he spins the ball on the ground or just does crazy things that's just going to be even more annoying when he's an Eagle. So just get used to that. Patrick Kahn says his actual name, haha, is Hashan. Honestly, I had no idea what his actual name was. I knew it wasn't haha. Jim Beatty says, did you actually think Landry Jones is the answer? No. They're grasping at straws. Although, I probably would have brought in Landry Jones to be the backup for the Cowboys, quite frankly. Keith Price, is Scott Linehan still on his way out? I mean, he's still with the team, so not yet, but could potentially happen shortly. Let me go ahead and hit the share button. And by the way, folks, if you could too, if you're not yet already, please do me a solid and hit that share button, because this is your show. If you watch the show, you might, I mean, people are constantly asking about Dez, and I'm constantly answering about Dez. So that should give you an indication of I answer every question, dumb or otherwise, because this is our community that we built. And the point here in doing so is not to call out people for being dumb or whatever. It's to Brian Broadus pointed this out. I think it's great. It's to brew more intelligent fans, and that's, I mean, that's not me saying I'm the most intelligent. I know what I'm saying, but I think the more people we have to exchange ideas, the closer we get to that, right? And that's what I like. Chris Bennett, Landry Jones did go 3-1 in the Red River Shootout. Chris, do you have these stats readily available? Like, do you have basically every UT stat, like, at your fingertips ready to go? Like, did you know that off the top? Did you know Landry Jones went 3-1 off the top of your head? Also, I'm surprised that's one you knew. Keith Jones says, any injury news right now? Haven't been following the injury report. Yeah, there is. The big one is Jeff Swaim, and I know that's why a lot of people have, brought up on this stream the potential for a Cameron Brate or a tight end. Which, I mean, losing Jeff Swaim sucks. He was playing better. Every week he was getting better and better and becoming a bigger contributor. Chris Bennett says yes. You did not. You had to look up the Jeff Swaim college numbers, and you know it. And I don't know that we know exactly what Jeff Swaim is dealing with, but it could be a month. I know, was it you that said he could be out 2 to 4 weeks? Now remember, he's basically already been out for 2 weeks. By the time they get to Monday night, he will have already been out for 2 weeks. So could be between basically 2 and 4 more games in addition to the 2 weeks he's already missed, which if you're going to get hurt before the bye week is a decent time to get hurt. Patrick Prescott's tagging some friends. Thanks for doing that, brother. I appreciate that. Will others follow suit? Jose Rocha, Saul Rocha, Gabe Rocha, David E. Maybe, and Mark Longmire. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that, Patrick. Do the same if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, Patrick Kahn says sprained MCL, 4 games in 18 days. All right, fine, Chris. Chris Bennett is omnipresent. So he knows all stats about Texas, which he probably actually does. Keith Jones, so this is Rico Gathers' time to shine if he's going to this year then? Yes. Yes. John Dyer, so who loses minutes with Cooper on the squad now? Minutes? John, you've been watching too much Spurs basketball lately. If I'm the Cowboys and Scott Linehan, the majority of my offensive snaps in 3 receiver sets are going to Cole Beasley, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. So, yeah, Patrick Kahn, Hearns. Yep. Tim Garcia says, hey, Ari. Hey, Tim, how are you? Right. So, Hearns. Bye, Hearns. And I think, here's what's interesting. I know Terrence Williams, people are like, get rid of Terrence Williams. Here's what's interesting about T. Will, right? So, Gallup's going to continue to develop. But let's just say the Cowboys get down the road, end of the season, and they're fighting for their playoff lives, and Hearns, not Hearns, Gallup isn't playing great. Like, remember, let's not forget, Terrence Williams, has he been the most productive receiver for the Cowboys? No. But he's been really good in that Y spot, right? Like, when you've got Dez and the X, like, you need a legitimately good number 2, and Terrence Williams has been that. So, I'm not saying, Terrence Williams is available to come off short-term IR. He should immediately replace Gallup. I'm just saying, it's not the worst insurance policy in the world. All right, should we move on to this second topic? So, trade deadline bonanza. Cowboys made the right move. I mean, sure, I like Golden Tate. He's a good player for the Eagles. I like Demaryius Thomas. He's a good player for the Texans. It helps my fantasy team because Demaryius Thomas was doing nothing on my fantasy team, and now we'll see if he does anything with a credible quarterback. So we'll see. It's interesting also that they traded him to Houston, and the Broncos and Texans are playing on Sunday, so that's kind of cool and weird. All right, so the next topic I wanted to get into is, well, something I was talking about with my buddy Patrick Kahn. Shout out to Patrick Kahn. At Draft Cowboys on Twitter if you're not already following him. And so what I've said about the Amari trade from the start was if the Cowboys were going to take a quarterback with their first round pick, then it's a bad move. I'm not sold on Dak, nor should you be. And on top of that, the Cowboys, even if Dak plays better, I mean, again, let's use Russell Wilson as an example here. Russell Wilson has nothing around him, and he's still performing at a very high level with Seattle. Offensive line's horrible. Receivers are bad. Running back's bad. Nothing around him. And he's still performing. Like, that's the kind of quarterback you pay $100 million to. Not a guy that needs everything to be right. So even if Dak plays well the rest of this year, that doesn't necessarily mean just go run out and sign him to a long-term contract. So that's the question is, should the Cowboys now, without a first-round draft pick, still looking at taking a quarterback in the draft, meaning they could take him at the earliest in the second round? What do you say on that? And I'll give you all a moment to sort of digest that and then address it if you'd like. Joe Tranchina says everyone was better with Romo. That's a fair point. Chris Bennett says, I've been accused of being a robot. Are you? Next time I come to Austin, Chris, can I meet you? Because Are you a robot? Where's Antonio Bryant? He's available. Eric Sharp says he's literally laughing out loud. What? At me? At my face? John Dyer says, hard to say. I wouldn't reach for a quarterback, but if one drops to us, then sure. Oh, Jim Beatty, maybe trade Hearns for a washing machine? I don't know. It's a lot to give up for Hearns. The CB9000. Yeah, I just think you're omnipresent. You are everywhere at all times. That's better than robot. That's being God, kind of, right? Ryan Drab says, LOL, Chris Bennett. Tony O'Brien. This is what the CB9000 spit out. It's all it knew. Bryant 88. Tony Enriquez says, no point. They lost drafting a quarterback in the trade. I think you give Dak the rest of this year and then assess what you have. Nick Gigas says, I believe the Cowboys will draft a quarterback. There are not so many teams that need a quarterback, so the Cowboys should draft a good one. That I don't agree with. So, again, shout out to Patrick Kahn, who sent me this statistic. I didn't have the exact number, but I knew that that more than half the quarterbacks in the league, in fact, more than 2/3 of the quarterbacks in the league, I thought, were first-round draft picks, right? Because that's the idea here is, you see a Tony Romo, an undrafted free agent. You see a Dak Prescott, a fourth-round pick. You see Russell Wilson. So it leads you to believe that you can find a quarterback to be the guy late in the draft. And thanks to Patrick Kahn for finding this for me, 70% of the current starters are first-round draft picks, okay? That does not include Drew Brees, who was the first pick of the second round. So, again, more than 70% of the current starting quarterbacks in the league were one of the 33 top picks in the draft. Okay, so here's the breakdown. 70% first round, 13% second round, 3% third round, and 16% fourth or later, which is Dak and Brady. The 1 third-round pick is Russell Wilson. I believe Russell Wilson was a third-round pick. The 4 second-round picks were Garoppolo, Drew Brees, and I'm missing 2 others off the top of my head. Ryan England says, did Ari just call Chris a god? Is that with a capital G too? LOL. I'm just saying he's omnipresent. He is everywhere at all times. Not a robot, better than a robot. So the point being, like, your best bet of getting a franchise quarterback is by taking one in the first round. Well, the Cowboys don't have a first round draft pick. So should they take a risk and take a quarterback in the second round? I'll cut to the chase. The Cowboys should not take a quarterback in the 2019 draft unless it's a 6th or a 7th round pick. And even then, I'd rather have lottery tickets at other positions. The Cowboys definitely need to take an offensive lineman and a tackle, and probably should do that in the second round. If they don't do that, they should probably look at tight end. But priorities for this team in this upcoming draft: defense, and so you can never have enough quality defensive players. That means rush ends, interior linemen, linebackers, corner, safety. For me, I just can't have enough of them. Keep taking them. I don't care how good they are 1 year. Guys have too much of a drop-off. It's just too hard to get consistency. So I would, every positional group on the defense, and then priorities on offense, which would be tight end, offensive line, and probably wide receiver too. So I think the Cowboys are not sold on Dak Prescott. I would take a quarterback in the first round in 2020. So I would be answering this question with a heart emoji. No, wait until 2020 and then take a quarterback in the first round when you have a first round draft pick again. I just don't know that what we've seen from Dak Prescott gives us enough to say that he is the guy. And even if he shows us more in the next few months, now do we look at that and say, well, that's because he had Amari Cooper and that's because the offensive line was better. And again, I know, you need a quarterback that's going to be good within the team ecosystem, but got too many average quarterbacks are getting paid when they've got everything else good, really good around them. And there's not enough good quarterbacks that can sort of transcend the players they have around them. And those are the guys that you take, that you give $100 million to. Ryan Drab says, 4th round and later starters, Dak, Brady, Keenum. Wasn't Cousins a fourth-round pick too? Sure. So there you go. Fourth round or later. Dak, Tom Brady, Case Keenum, who is an undrafted free agent, who's not a good quarterback in any capacity whatsoever. And then Kirk Cousins, who you could argue is not a franchise $100 million quarterback, which that's what I'm arguing here. I'm not arguing whether or not they could be credible. I'm arguing whether or not they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ninja Nuts, Jameis is not better than Dak. Poorly, I mean, and again, it's not a guarantee. Not a guarantee you take a quarterback with the first overall pick, they're going to be good. Ryan Leaf wasn't any good. But the majority of starting quarterbacks in the NFL are first-round draft picks. And then when you get into the subset even further, Matt Ryan's a first overall pick. Eli Manning's a first overall pick. Phillip Rivers is the second overall pick. Marcus Mariota was a top 3 pick. Obviously, Jameis was. So, I mean, when you go even further, I mean, Mitch Trubisky was the second overall pick. Not only are these guys majority of them first-round draft picks, the majority of them are top 5 picks. Curtis Stark says, Ari, great show. Got to go, bro. Appreciate you, brother. Dean Cruisinger wants to know updates on Travis Frederick. I would just say this, Dean. Let's expect Travis Frederick to not play at all this season, and if he does, that'd be awesome. But the update on Frederick is it's going to be hard for me to believe that he could play at any point this season. Raul Marmolejo Jr. says, bro, looking like Manu Ginobili, LOL. It's true. I do. People have said that for a long time. Brian Walker says that Georgia quarterback going to come out in 2020. If he is, the Cowboys should do what they need to get him. Jake Fromm, State Farm. One of my favorite nicknames in sports. Jake Fromm, State Farm. Yeah, he can come out after. Although there's questions in Georgia on whether or not he should even be the quarterback right now, which is crazy. But yeah, Jake Fromm can come out in 2020. He'll be part of that draft class. Tua Tagovailoa will be part of that draft class. Trevor Lawrence obviously will not be true freshman quarterback for Clemson. Off the top of my head, I mean, Justin Herbert potentially if he does stay this year, which I think would be crazy for him to do, but he could. Stidham, another one, yes. Jesse Garcia says, missed the whole session. Damn, these meetings are killing my attendance. Gonna have to quit my job. LOL. I mean, you might have to, Jesse. I'm not gonna lie. It wouldn't be the craziest move in the world. All right, so again, just to reiterate, I think the Cowboys, I would rather the Cowboys use the draft capital they have in the 2019 draft to invest in other positions. And so I would not take a quarterback in the 2019 draft. I would not take a quarterback in the 2019 draft. I would wait until 2020 to do it. Joseph Mobley says if Will Grier is on the board when they pick in the second round, they should get him. Well, and that's, I guess, the caveat, right, is should they take a Will Grier, a guy they like in the second round if they're available? You know, I'm still sort of the belief of, well, again, it's the first round. That's where you're getting the majority of these guys. And I'd rather have a better, more sure lottery ticket that I can use right away in the second round for my offensive line or for my tight end. Nick Giga says, how many teams really need a quarterback in 19? I mean, I don't know, Nick, but every year teams, I mean, Tampa's probably going to be looking to draft a new quarterback. New York, the Giants, are probably going to take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick if they get it. Who are other teams that are going to be picking the top of the draft? The Jaguars are probably going to be in the market for a quarterback. So, I mean, that's 3 off the top of my head. Patrick Kahn, your top 3 picks should be starters. Yes. And you mean 2020, right? So next draft. Correct. Yes. 2020. That's when I would draft a quarterback. I would not draft a quarterback in 2019. All right, topic 3. Somebody brought this up about Jason Garrett. Dean Cruisinger says, thanks, Ari and Jim Beatty. Thank you, Jim Beatty. Raul Marmolejo Jr. says, need better safety. Sure, agreed. Robert Anchetta was talking to Chris, not me. Cool. Okay, so here's a graphic that John Machota from the Dallas Morning News tweeted out, and I think it's an important graphic to look at. This table notates the different coaches that have been with the Cowboys under Jason Garrett's watch. So as you see, they've had, including himself, 3 different offensive coordinators. They've had 3 different defensive coordinators, Rob Ryan, Monty Kiffin, and Rod Marinelli. And you could basically count this year as a 4th in Chris Richard. They've had 3 different special teams coordinators, Joe DeCamillis, Rich Bisaccia, and Keith O'Quinn now is the new one. They've had a lot of positional coaches change over. I mean, look at that tight ends list. Holy cow. John Garrett, Wes Phillips, Mike Pope, Steve Loney, Doug Nussmeier. Wide receivers coach, they've had a decent amount of turnover. Running backs coach, they have not had much turnover. Gary Brown's done it except for Skip Pete in the first 2 years of Jason Garrett's era. The reason I bring this table up is to not go through it person by person. But there is one guy still on the staff that started with Jason Garrett. And he hasn't been coaching this team since Jason Garrett's first season. That's Hudson Houck. Matt Eberflus is the one guy that was with Jason Garrett every year and then left after this season. Brian Walker. Well, I'm off to get a surgery to remove a melanoma. Take care. Well, be well, man. Good luck. Hope that goes okay for you, and hopefully you're not in too much pain. Good luck with that, man. Yeah, hope all goes well, brother. Sorry to hear that. So this is to tell you again, Jason Garrett is going to lose his job if the Cowboys don't make the playoffs. He doesn't have anywhere else to hide. They have hired and fired every different positional coach and coordinator you could possibly think of. The one common denominator is the guy doing the hiring. And this is even more heightened by the situation at the offensive line. Patrick Kahn, in the Super Bowl era, no coach has won a Super Bowl after being with the same team after 6 years. They haven't been to a Super Bowl in the previous 6 years, which is an interesting statistic. And I don't, to me, Andy Reid, I believe this is year 6 for him in Kansas City. I think Andy Reid could win with Kansas City. I just don't think Jason Garrett's a very good head coach, so I don't think he could win a Super Bowl with them. I get that stat. It makes sense because most coaches don't get that much time if they don't win a Super Bowl. But for Garrett, I just think he's a bad coach, and that's why he's not going to win a Super Bowl. Chris Payne says, upgrade Jason to GM and Romo to OC. That's a great, and they should definitely do that. Romo would be a great offensive coordinator. It's something I talk about all the time. So, thumbs up if you think fire Garrett now, heart emoji if you think fire Garrett after the season, and laughing emoji if you say keep Garrett, which is laughable. Tracy Foster says Jerry Jones needs to step down, let new management take over, and he does. Look, again, on Jerry, this is a different organization, it has a different organizational structure than it's had. Stephen Jones is running the show for the most part, Will McClay, their coaching staff, they all have valid input. So Jerry does sort of delegate to other members of the organization to make decisions. But if I were answering this question, to cut to the chase, I'd give the heart emoji. To cut to the chase, I'd give the heart emoji here. Fire Jason Garrett after the season because you've at least got to let this thing play out after the changes they've made throughout the course of the rest of the season. But, when he needed to hire a new offensive line coach, and he goes and finds Paul Alexander after dragging his feet on somebody else that might have been a better fit, and Paul Alexander is going to change the technique for an all-pro offensive line, that's on the head coach for making that hire, especially when halfway into the season they decide to go to the guy that has been with this staff for the last 2 years. And that's Mark Colombo. They probably should have hired Colombo to be the offensive line coach at the beginning of the season. That's on Garrett. The playoff losses, the lack of playoff opportunities, those are on Garrett. He will be replaced if they don't make the playoffs. There's no excuses now. They fired this bad coach in the offensive line. They traded for Amari Cooper with a first-round pick. They expect to be a playoff team. When you trade a first-round pick for anybody, you expect to be a playoff team. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be trading away first-round picks. So if they aren't a playoff team, then Garrett's going to lose his job. He's got no places to hide anymore. That's the situation. Travis Adams says, don't fire Garrett until you can find somebody better, and there's nobody out there right now that is worth it. That I vehemently disagree with you on. Travis, you're going to tell me that there's no coach out there available to hire that'd be better than Jason Garrett? Are you crazy? I can think of 30. Eric Sharp, just don't grab Hugh Jackson. For the love of God, just don't grab Hugh Jackson. Tucker Sargent says, why are we even talking about getting a quarterback? The problems on offense are not Dak. Seriously? I mean, look, I'll defend Dak with the rest of them, but really? None of the issues on offense are a part of Dak? I'm gonna go ahead and disagree. We're gonna have to agree to disagree there. And as I'll continue to say, if you're a type of quarterback that needs everything to be perfect, then you're not a $100 million quarterback. You're not. Jason Turner, have to see what happens. Firing a coach midseason is when you know you have no shot at the playoffs. Exactly. Dean Kruisinger, Steven does a great job. Draft picks are very good, and they don't go out and grab all of the free agent skins. Well, in fact, I mean, until they made the Amari Cooper trade, they weren't going out and grabbing any free agents. But now, thankfully, they made this trade, and they brought somebody finally in from outside the organization. But I brought this up before. Brandon Carr, last guy from outside the organization they brought in on a big-time contract. Steve Eason, there's better head coaches on the team right now. Chris Richard. I don't know about that, but I get your point. Lincoln Riley, Brian Walker says, yeah, hell yeah. Brian, I thought you left to go get surgery, dude. Jessica, send message pop up after each of my comments. I don't know, buddy. I don't know. Ninja Nut says, I can handle losing an 18 and up pick. If we lose a top 8-10, I'm going to be pissed. Yep. Travis Adams wants me to name some coaches. Okay. Josh McDaniels. Lincoln Riley. Sean Payton. Joe DiFilippo. John DiFilippo. The former quarterback coach in Philly. Offensive coordinator of the Vikings. You get my point. David Shaw. That's just a few. I don't know, like virtually any other offensive or defensive coordinator in the league right now. Barry Griffith says, great point right there, Ari. He's not a $100 million quarterback. That's it. From what I've seen so far, he's not. Now, he can change that to a certain degree. All right, everybody, thank you for being a part of today's show. Thank you for being a part, if you are, of every day's show, because this show is your show. It's an interactive show. It's the most interactive Dallas Cowboys show out there. This is built for you. Phantom puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion, so that's what this is. So thank you to all of the Showtimers, the folks that are part of this community that have helped and are helping me to build this brick by brick. Brian Walker, Ninja Nuts, G. Garcia, Patrick Kahn, Barry Griffith, Jesse Garcia, Chris Payne, Travis Adams, Keith Price, Eric Sharp, Brian Hernandez, Dean Kruisinger, Jason Turner, Eric Sharp, I mentioned him before, but I'll mention him again, Dakota Stiegel, Corey Miller, Tracy Foster, Lori Morales, lots of you guys. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for being a part of the show each and every day. If this is your first time, I hope you'll come back again tomorrow. I'm Ari Temkin. Thanks for checking this out. You can catch me on the Dallas Cowboys pre- and post-game show at 105.3 The Fan. And, of course, streaming live every single day at noon Central right here on Phantom, putting you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion.